At exactly 9:17 p.m., the motion light above our garage flicked on. I wasn't near a window. I wasn't even looking outside. But I heard it, the faint hum of an engine idling. Low, patient, like it knew I was listening, like it had been there before. I paused the dishwasher mid-cycle and stood there with a sponge in my hand, soaked in lemon-scented suds in dread. There's no reason for anyone to be in our driveway at that hour. Not in this neighborhood. Not where the houses are 30 feet apart and nobody visits uninvited. Still, I didn't move, because deep down, I knew why he was there. She was upstairs, not asleep, not even pretending, just sitting on the edge of the bed in that black zip-up hoodie she never wore around me. Her phone was in her lap, screen glowing, and her shoes were already on. No words were exchanged. None needed. She walked past me in the hallway like a ghost who had already died weeks ago. I followed her to the door, not to stop her, not to argue, just to confirm it was real. When she opened it, he was already walking up the path. He didn't knock. He didn't even look at me. She said, "I won't be back tonight." I whispered, "This is our house." She replied, "It was." And then she left. No suitcase. No tears. Just the soft click of the door behind her. I stood there for a full 10 minutes. The dishwasher beeped twice. The fridge made a sound like it was clearing its throat. Everything around me continued existing like nothing had just collapsed. But something had. The worst part? It wasn't the first time that car had been in our driveway. It was just the first time I heard it. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. I didn't pace. I didn't cry. I didn't rage smash anything like in the movies. I just sat at the kitchen table, lights off, staring at the dark space on the counter where her tea kettle used to be. She took that too, I realized. Subtle, like everything else. Like she wanted the house to feel the same while becoming slightly less hers every day. Just enough to make me question my memory. Around 3:24 a.m., my phone buzzed once. Not a call, just a voicemail. No missed call registered. Just a voicemail. I didn't even hesitate. I played it on speaker. It was a man's voice. Not his voice. Someone older. Rougher. Like gravel being poured into a metal bucket. She's not where you think she is. And she's not who you think she is either. She never was. That was it. No name. No number. No background noise. Not even a click at the end. I replayed it a dozen times, trying to pick apart the tone. Was it a threat? A warning? A mistake? Part of me thought maybe it was a prank. But how would they know? No one even knew she was gone. She hadn't told her sister. Her job thought she was working remotely all week. She didn't leave a note, or a message, or a trace. Except for the tea kettle. And the blue toothbrush missing from the bathroom. And the empty space in the coat closet where her green raincoat used to hang. I went outside in my slippers and checked the driveway. The tire marks were still there. Not deep, but fresh. The grass was slightly bent where someone had stepped off the pavement to open the passenger side door. Him, probably. Or maybe her. It was around 4 a.m. when I did something I hadn't done since we got married. I opened her laptop. She never changed the password, still her childhood dog's name, spelled wrong on purpose. I told myself I wasn't snooping. I was just trying to understand. Find some kind of proof that what happened actually happened. That it wasn't some exhaustion-induced nightmare. The laptop was clean. Too clean. No tabs open. No recent history. Even the browser cache was cleared. But then I checked the downloads folder. There were PDFs. All downloaded in the last 3 weeks. One was a bank transfer confirmation. A large amount of money moved into a newly opened joint account, with a name I didn't recognize. One was a travel itinerary. One way, different city, different state, no return date. And one was a scanned document. A marriage license. Not ours. Same first name. Different last name. Different man. Filed 2 days before she walked out. My hand went cold. Literally. I had to rub my fingers together to get blood flowing again. My ears were ringing. I couldn't process what I was seeing. How could she marry someone else? We were still married. Legally. Physically. Emotionally. Well, I guess that part had ended long before I noticed. I shut the laptop. And that's when I realized the voicemail wasn't just a warning. It was a dare. I didn't plan to go into the attic that morning. I hadn't been up there in months. Probably a year, actually. We used to store winter coats and broken holiday decorations up there. Things neither of us had touched since the pandemic. But when I walked past the hallway around 6:40 a.m., on my way to get more coffee I didn't even want, I noticed something odd. The attic light string was hanging down. Now that might seem small, stupid, even, but that cord has never, not once in my entire life in this house, just hung there. You have to physically pull it down with force, and I never leave it like that because it gets caught in the hallway closet door. Maris used to yell at me about that. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the rope like it was a snake dangling from the ceiling. I didn't want to go up. I really didn't. But then I remembered the voicemail. The one that said she's not who I think she is. And the fake marriage license. And the one-way plane ticket. And suddenly, the part of me that didn't want to know things, that part went quiet. I pulled the cord. The light came on instantly. That buzzing, flickering attic bulb that never quite worked right was now shining steady. Almost too steady. I climbed the steps, each one creaking louder than I remembered. There was a sharp smell up there, like dust and lemon cleaner. But also something else. Something metallic. At first, it looked like nothing had changed. The boxes were still there, mostly unlabeled. Our old mattress stood against the wall like a coffin propped on its side. But in the far corner, behind the wardrobe we'd never been able to get downstairs, there was a pile of items I didn't recognize. Newer things. A duffel bag. A laptop bag. A small black hard case that looked like it belonged in the trunk of a government vehicle. I pulled the duffel first. Inside, there were burner phones. 4 of them. Still in plastic. One was active. Charged. Open to a text thread I wasn't supposed to see. The messages weren't from a man. They were from a woman named Lena. And they were terrifying in how casual they were. Lena, he doesn't suspect a thing? Maris, not yet. He thinks I'm still working on the grant application. Lena, he's slow, isn't he? Maris, painfully. That's why this works. There were dozens of messages. No names. No direct mentions of anything illegal. But the tone, it wasn't right. It was like watching someone wear your face, but talk like a stranger. I sat down on the attic floor. My legs gave out. And I think I laughed. Not out of humor, but because it was the only thing I could do that didn't involve screaming. Then I opened the black case. Inside were folders. Handwritten notes. Photos. Surveillance photos. Some of me. Some of us. But also other people. People I didn't know. One picture showed a man in a blue jacket standing outside a warehouse with a briefcase. Another showed a woman at a bus stop holding a bouquet of lilies. Every photo had a time, date, and location scribbled in red pen. I flipped through the folders like a man possessed. Notes in Maris's handwriting. Details about travel routes, shadow contacts, cash pickups. It was like reading someone else's biography. Someone who looked like my wife, but lived an entirely different life. And that's when I saw the envelope. It was addressed to me. My full name. All caps. Nothing else. Inside was a single Polaroid. It was a picture of me. Sleeping. In our bed. Alone. The timestamp was from 2 nights ago, which means someone was in my house. While I slept. I didn't go back downstairs right away. I sat there in the attic, surrounded by burner phones and strangers' faces, with that picture of myself sleeping in my hand, and I felt like I had walked straight off the edge of my own life. Nothing around me felt like it belonged to me anymore. Not the house. Not the air. And definitely not my marriage. Eventually, after what felt like hours, I powered on the one burner phone that was still active. I stared at the screen. There were 4 recent contacts. One just said Lena. The other 3 were numbers. No names, just strings of digits. No area codes I recognized. But one stood out. It had been called 5 times in the last 48 hours. The most recent call lasted over 40 minutes. I didn't want to press it. I didn't want to know. But I also couldn't live with not knowing. That's the thing they don't tell you about betrayal. It's not the heartbreak that destroys you. It's the unknowing. The rotting space between what you thought and what actually was. I pressed the number and held the phone to my ear. It rang once. Then clicked. Silence. I didn't say anything. Neither did the voice on the other end. Not at first. Then, in a low, calm, oddly polite tone, a man said, "You're not supposed to have this number." I froze. "Who are you?" More silence. Then a soft sigh. "I'm going to tell you something that won't make sense right now. She was trying to protect you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to believe him, which felt even worse. Protect me from what? He didn't answer that. Instead, he said, "Did you open the black case?" My mouth went dry. "Yeah." Another pause. "Then you already know more than you should. And less than you need." I don't know what it was about the way he said that, but something about it felt final. Like a chess move I hadn't realized was checkmate yet. Then the line went dead. No click. Just silence. And then the call dropped. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe right for a while. Just sat there holding that cheap plastic phone like it weighed 50 pounds. My thoughts were spiraling. Maris had been communicating with this man. 40-minute conversations. On a burner phone. In our attic. Why? What could she possibly have been protecting me from? And if she was trying to protect me, why did she leave with him? I came downstairs in a daze. The morning sun was starting to spill through the blinds, painting the kitchen in that soft, golden warmth that suddenly felt hostile. The house felt wrong. It felt staged, like someone had rearranged it while I wasn't looking. And maybe they had. That's when I saw the note. Folded perfectly, sitting in the fruit bowl we hadn't used in years. Just a single sheet of paper, written in her handwriting. It wasn't dated. It wasn't signed. It just said, "If you're reading this, I'm either gone, or they made me disappear. Don't try to find me. Don't trust anyone, not even the photos. And whatever you do, don't open the red box in the basement." Not yet. There was a red box in the basement. We used it to store old tax documents. Or at least, that's what I thought. It took me 3 hours to work up the nerve. The red box had been sitting there in the basement corner for years, under an old canvas tarp, half buried behind broken lampshades and coils of dusty extension cords. I'd passed it 100 times without thinking twice. It never meant anything. It was just background clutter. Now it felt radioactive. The basement was damp that morning. The kind of cold that settles in your bones, makes your joints ache. It smelled like rust and something faintly organic. I took the tarp off slowly, hands trembling more than I cared to admit. The box was heavier than it looked. Thick plastic, reinforced corners, metal latches. It had a combination lock. I didn't know the code, but apparently, she thought I would. I sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, staring at it like it might blink. I tried our anniversary. Wrong. Her birthday. Wrong again. Then something hit me. A dumb idea, but I went with it. The street address of our first apartment. 349. Click. The latch gave way. Inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not of decay or mold. No, it smelled sterile. Chemical. Like hospital wipes and dry paper. And beneath the top layer of files and folders, there was something soft. A folded flannel shirt. My shirt. The one I lost last fall and assumed I left at the laundromat. It was pressed, neatly folded, with a photograph tucked underneath. The photo nearly stopped my heart. It was me, standing outside our house, holding groceries. Smiling. Looking up at the sky. Innocent. But it wasn't a regular photo. It had timestamps, GPS coordinates, and a thin red circle around my head. Surveillance grade. Below it, in red ink, someone had written one word. Unconfirmed. I dug deeper. More photos. More files. More references to me. Except they weren't about me. They were about someone who looked like me. Reports filed with some internal tag system I didn't recognize. Pages and pages of observation logs. Times I went to work. Places I stopped on the way home. Once, there was a record of me buying a sandwich at a gas station, down to the brand of mustard. But here's the thing. I never bought that sandwich. Not ever. I don't even eat mustard. There were 2 versions of me in those documents. Or maybe there were 2 versions of reality. One labeled Eldinar, with data matching my life. And one labeled Subject 6R, a code name, apparently. And according to the files, Subject 6R had been seen entering restricted facilities, meeting people I'd never heard of, and, most disturbing of all, leaving town for days at a time without Maris knowing. Except she did know. She was the one writing half these reports. I found her signature on 4 of them. She'd been tracking me. Or tracking him. Or tracking both. My hands were ice cold. My skin had that numb, floating sensation like I was about to faint. But I couldn't stop. I kept flipping through the contents, each folder more bizarre than the last. Bank statements from accounts I didn't recognize, but that had my name. A copy of a passport photo that looked almost like me, but the eyes were off. Colder. Emptier. A receipt for a hotel stay in Tucson I absolutely did not remember. And then, at the very bottom, under a false panel in the case, there was a flash drive, labeled with a single date. October 19th. I recognized the date instantly. It was the night Maris and I got into the worst fight of our marriage. The night I punched the bathroom mirror. The night she said something I never forgot. You don't even realize when you're not you anymore. Back then, I thought she meant emotionally. Metaphorically. Now, I wasn't so sure. I went upstairs and plugged the flash drive into her laptop. What I saw on it made me question everything, from my memories to my reflection in the mirror. I didn't want to press play, not because I was afraid of what I'd see, but because some small, battered part of me was still hoping I'd misunderstood everything. That Maris had cracked under pressure, that I'd been caught in some strange, accidental rabbit hole, that this was all just the grief of a man realizing his marriage was over. But the moment the first frame of the video lit up the screen, that hope died quietly in the back of my throat. The footage was grainy, security style, black and white, no sound, a date and timestamp in the bottom right corner, October 19th, 2:37 a.m. The location wasn't our home. It was a parking garage, dimly lit, mostly empty. One camera, angled downward from a ceiling mount, showing the front of a black SUV. Then I walked into frame. Except, I don't remember being there. He moved like me, wore my clothes, right down to the jacket I thought I lost at a gas station last year. But there was something about the way he walked. Purposeful, mechanical, like he was acting out a scene he'd practiced hundreds of times. He walked to the passenger side, opened the door, and pulled something out. It was a duffel bag, the same one I found in the attic. He popped the trunk, threw it in, and then stood there, perfectly still, for almost 90 seconds. No phone, no keys, just standing, facing away from the camera. And then he looked up, straight into the lens. His face was mine, but his eyes, no, those weren't my eyes. There was no doubt, no fear, no exhaustion, just a dead, calm stare. And in that moment, I swear to God, he knew I was watching. The video ended there. No explanation, no transition, just a file dump of silence. I stared at the screen long after it went black. I needed to convince myself it was some kind of deep fake, AI-generated nonsense. But the timestamp aligned perfectly with the night of our fight. And that jacket, the one he wore, I found it a week later in the trunk of my car, with mud on it I couldn't explain and a tear in the sleeve I didn't remember getting. Back then, I told myself I'd probably worn it drunk and forgotten. But now I wasn't so sure. I started digging deeper into the flash drive. There were other files. Photos of me at work. Logs of my online activity. Printouts of emails, some of which I recognized, and others I swear I never sent. One email had my name and signature at the bottom, sent to an address I didn't recognize, containing a string of encrypted numbers and a map of a city I'd never been to. There was even a short memo labeled Cycle Report, 6R. It read, "Subject remains unaware of baseline deviation. Mimic integration is exceeding expected stability benchmarks. Emotional deterioration appears contained. No need for reset at this time. Continue observation." I had to reread that sentence 5 times. Mimic integration? No need for reset. What did any of that mean? Was I being studied? Replaced? Was he me or was I him? The more I searched, the less I trusted my own memory. How many days had I actually lost? How many moments did I think I lived that maybe belonged to someone else? I opened our wedding album on my phone, just to ground myself. To remember the day I knew was real. But even that began to feel off. The smile on my face didn't match how I remembered feeling. The way I held her, stiff, almost posed. The more I looked, the more wrong it felt. Like I was watching someone else live my life from just behind the curtain. And then, just before I shut the laptop, a new file appeared on the flash drive. I hadn't seen it before. Live_feed. MP4. It was a webcam feed. Of my living room. Right now. From above. And in the frame, sitting on the couch, holding a burner phone in his hand, wearing my face, was him. He looked up again. And he smiled. I didn't move for a full 2 minutes after the video loaded. My own face, sitting there calmly on my couch, legs crossed, phone in hand, watched the camera like it was a mirror. He wasn't doing anything. Not threatening. Not speaking. Just existing. As if that alone was the violation. As if being me was his only objective. I shut the laptop, but it was too late. The image was burned into my brain. My chest felt tight, like the air around me had changed composition, thicker, charged. Every creak in the floorboards made my muscles twitch. I walked to the living room slowly, half expecting to see him still there. It was empty. Of course it was. But the throw blanket on the couch was folded differently. The mug that had been on the coffee table last night was gone. And the small scratch on the floor near the fireplace, the one I always caught my sock on, was filled in. Perfectly patched, like someone had sanded and repainted it. That terrified me more than if he'd actually been there, because it meant this wasn't chaos. This was methodical, surgical. Whoever, or whatever, was doing this, they weren't just copying me. They were editing me. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and looked at myself in the mirror for the first time in hours. Something wasn't right. I leaned closer. My skin looked dry, paler than normal. My eyes, were they more sunken than yesterday? My pupils didn't respond to the light as fast as they should have. My right hand had a tremor I couldn't explain. I flexed my fingers, rubbed them together. I tried to smile, just to see if my reflection still knew how. It didn't look right either. Suddenly, I couldn't remember the last time I slept. Like really slept. I opened my phone. My camera roll was wrong. Images missing. Some duplicated with slight differences. One showed me and Maris at the lake. Only I had never owned the hoodie I was wearing. Another showed me holding a small black dog. We've never had pets. But in the photo, I was smiling like that dog was mine. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I picked up instantly, not even thinking. A voice, female this time, whispered, "He's not the only one." My breath caught in my throat. "Who are you?" "You need to stop digging," she said. "They're watching the digger, not the corpse." "What does that even mean?" I asked, practically yelling. But she hung up. The line went dead, like she had never existed. I called the number back. Nothing. Just static. I sat on the bathroom floor and started writing everything down. Every inconsistency, every moment I questioned, every object in the house that wasn't where it should have been. The handwriting on my grocery list had changed. The fridge calendar had appointments I didn't remember making. One of them was circled in red. August 12th, final sync. That was 7 days away. And then I remembered something else. Something Maris said to me during one of our last arguments. I had accused her of disappearing emotionally, of hiding things. And instead of defending herself, she said, "What if the real you is the one hiding things from me?" At the time, I thought she was deflecting. But now I wasn't so sure. Because if there really was another version of me walking around, patching my house, smiling with my face, moving through my life, what if I wasn't the original? What if I was the copy? The night before August 12th, I didn't sleep. But it wasn't from fear this time. It was clarity. After everything, the surveillance, the notes, the phone calls, the other me, I had reached the edge of something terrifying. But beyond that fear, just past the dizziness of questioning my own mind, I finally saw it for what it was. This wasn't about clones, or AI, or parallel versions. It was about fragmentation. About how easy it is to lose yourself when you stop paying attention to who you are. Not in some sci-fi, thriller movie kind of way, but in the slow, quiet ways that real life shreds you. I had been two people for a long time. The one I performed for Maris, for work, for the world, and the version I buried, quietly, gradually, until he became a ghost wearing my skin. That's what she'd been watching. Not another me, but the disappearance of the real one. And maybe she hadn't left out of betrayal. Maybe she'd left out of grief. That morning, August 12th, I woke up before sunrise and went outside. I stood barefoot in the grass, coffee in hand, and waited. Not for him. Not for some grand reveal or a gunfight or a sci-fi showdown. I was waiting for whatever came next. At 7:06 a.m., a black car pulled up. The same one she left in. Only this time, it was her behind the wheel. She stepped out slowly, cautiously, holding nothing but her phone. No bags. No drama. Her eyes were tired but calm. She looked older. Or maybe just more real than I'd let her be in my memory. We stood across from each other, not speaking for a long moment. Then she said, "You made it." I asked, "To what?" She shrugged. "To the other side of yourself." I laughed quietly. "You were never trying to replace me, were you?" She shook her head. "I was trying to find the version of you that still wanted to live. The one that didn't wake up already halfway gone." That hit harder than anything else. Because she wasn't wrong. I stepped forward. "And now?" She smiled, soft, real. "Now we see what's left to build." We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just stood there together for a while, watching the lights spill across the lawn, letting the moment breathe. Eventually, she handed me her phone. There was only one thing on the screen, a message thread titled Final Sync. All the strange logs, reports, photos deleted. Just a final message. Cycle terminated. Identity stabilized. No further action required. I didn't ask what system it came from. I didn't want to know. All I knew was this. I had been at war with myself for years, and for the first time in forever, I was choosing to stop fighting. To remember. To breathe. To stop being a ghost in my own house. Maris got back in the car. Before she drove off, she looked at me and said, "If you want to find me again, you know where not to look." And I did. Not in the attic. Not in the files. Not in the shadows of a broken man. But forward. Into something honest. Into someone new.